U.S. President Donald Trump used his record-long State of the Union address last night to defend his global tariffs. So for reaction to this, we're joined live this morning by Ian Lee, Associate Professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. Ian, always appreciate taking some time to talk to you about all things like this. So what is your take on what we heard from President Trump last night when it comes to tariffs? I mean, he was doing it in front of his Supreme Court, which struck down the tariffs that he brought in, just about a year ago.
I'm going to probably, again, give a contrarian point of view. I think we are past peak Trump tariffs. I say that because, of course, the landmark tariff decision of the Supreme Court last Friday and the Congress the week before that, including some Republican members, that voted down one of his bills on tariffs. And so last night, to your question, he sounded awfully defensive. I think he realizes he's vulnerable. I mean, his poll numbers are down quite dramatically. Doesn't look good for the November midterms. Looks like he could lose the House of Representatives in the November election to the Democrats. And if that's the case, he is going to have nothing but a world of pain for the final 2 years of his presidency.
He's defensive, yet he's doubling down, Professor. As he sort of first of all comes out and says, okay, now it's 10% global tariffs. That now he wants to rise those to 15%. Saying there's a different way to do this without going through the IEPA. So as much as he may be in that, I agree with everything you just said. By the way, just based on analysis, but he's also just lashing out and slashing and still trying to do what he was trying to accomplish, just for a different route.
You're absolutely correct. And just in the last 48 hours, there was a very good critique by a trade professor in the Wall Street Journal, which is a very well-known conservative newspaper that generally supports Republican government policies, as well as a separate analysis by yet another scholar in the New York Times, followed by the third one in the Globe and Mail this morning. Where am I going with this? All three of these independent, nonpartisan analyses said that the law that Trump is using to now support the new 15% tariff is more problematic legally, from a legal point of view, than was the IEP, or the emergency law that was just struck down. In other words, he's hanging his new tariff regime on a law that is not that it's an illegal law, but it does not, the argument goes, give him the authority to impose those tariffs, which means there will be more challenges in the courts, and it would be quite likely that this summer or fall, one of the courts will strike down these new tariffs, just as the election is ramping up for the midterms, when affordability is increasingly the number one issue in the United States, as it is, by the way, in Canada.
Exactly. So that's Trump's situation. So let's leave south of the border where it is, because, of course, up here now, we've got the Prime Minister, yet again going to other foreign destinations further afield than the U.S., looking for other trade partnerships, trade deals, etc. Really also no sign of any kind of side deal with Canada, tariffs, et cetera here. Time now, would you say, based on your analysis and what we're seeing from these different, whether it's conservative or otherwise, appears to be on the Canadian side, that we're not sort of getting drawn into these, tariff battles and tiffs with Trump, that we're sort of letting the chips fall and then we're seeing where it goes?
I agree with you, and my critique, and I do support these trade diversification initiatives by the government, by Prime Minister Carney. But the elephant in the room, and we all know what the elephant in the room is, the elephant in the country, is, of course, the American elephant. And we are negotiating, or going to start imminently negotiating with the Americans for a new Kuzma, whichever we want to call it. And you got to believe that these tariffs are going to be number one, number two, number three, number 10 on that negotiating agenda. The tariffs on the cars, the tariffs on the aluminum, the tariffs on the steel, which were not struck down because they were not imposed under the emergency laws. That's hurting our economy, and we need a tariff-free agreement or something as close as possible. And I think that Mr. Carney should be preparing public opinion for the compromises that are going to be necessary to negotiate a successful trade agreement with the Americans in the next weeks and months ahead.
Yeah, we're going to need to be prepared for that indeed, because, of course, that is a huge deal for Canada. We're basically the least tariff nation in the world right now, based on the U.S. Professor Lee, appreciate your time this morning. Always good to chat with you, and we'll see where things go and have another conversation, I'm sure, shortly down the road.